Welcome to Education Influencers. I'm your host, Dr. Carla Sparks. It is my great pleasure to have the special guest today, Dr. Libby Simpson. She is a change maker and influencer in education as the education director at a major national organization in the United States. Welcome, Dr. Libby Simpson. Welcome, Dr. Libby Simpson. It's so wonderful to have you with me today.
Thank you. It's so great to be here, Dr. Sparks.
Well, let's jump right in because we have a lot to talk about, and I want to find out some things about what you're doing as a change maker and an influencer. I know you're making great strides in those areas. So, your doctoral degree was just conferred in 2024. So, since then, what doors have opened for you to make a difference in the larger education community?
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's hard to believe you just look back at just 1 year ago, we were doing graduation and dissertation defense and been introducing my new title. So that was a process. There's a phase there of, yes, introducing myself as Dr. Simpson or Dr. Libby. I do go by Dr. Libby with my students, but it truly has deepened my credibility within my education community, with folks in my professional sphere, and open up new leadership opportunities for myself kind of on a broader scale. And I think the best thing that it's done for me is it's given me a stronger voice in conversations on STEM, which was my dissertation topic. So I've lived and breathed in that world and been a professional in the STEM world for the whole of my professional career in one way or another. So that has really given me that credibility. It's also allowed me to collaborate more confidently with educational leaders. I consult on curriculum strategy and present at national conferences like ISTE and ITEEA. And it just gives me a different uh, essence to what I'm bringing forward and what I'm saying, because obviously having gone through a doctoral program, there's a level of rigor there. And then with my topic being so closely connected with what I do in my day to day as a career and what I had done as an educator in the classroom for almost 15 years, I'm able to bridge the practical application of everything that I had done in those years now with a research-based, evidence-based reasoning of equity in STEM education. So I always wear that practitioner first and kind of having been there, done that. But I find with being Dr. Simpson, who has been there and done that, it's just a little bit of a better message. It lands a lot smoother.
Yes, that doesn't surprise me at all. I've noticed the same thing with myself and with lots of students that I've worked with. Once they earn that degree that comes with the titles, somehow people start really listening. And I have a couple of follow-up questions to what you just
Sure.
said. So I'm going to ask you a double-pronged question. First, what do you mean when you say STEM? That's an acronym. And then what were you doing before around STEM?
Absolutely. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. To me, what STEM is, it is a highly interdisciplinary way of applying those four disciplines in a way like through the lens of engineering. So engineering being the application of science and math through the use of technology. And in my dissertation, my focus was how do we in STEM education make sure that we have an equity focus and making sure that all students have access to STEM education if they desire it. And what was the second part of your question?
You
Sorry.
mentioned in your previous career that in the past
Yes.
what you had done around STEM. So I just thought that would be interesting to hear about.
Fantastic. Yes. So I was an educator who transitioned to teaching. I was like a second career educator, as it will. So I was in the engineering field as an electrical engineer. I thought I was kind of taking a little break to teach a class I had never heard of called technology education. And I ended up just absolutely falling in love with teaching and stayed at the middle school level for 12 years. So that was my bridge between what I did in my first career as a STEM professional and then into engineering education and STEM education, as that acronym kind of came into favor. And thankfully, it wasn't a fad, it was here to stay. And because it definitely has ties to our workforce needs globally and relation to needing STEM workers and a diversified STEM workforce. So being able to bridge that I had lived that experience as a STEM professional, understood what it was like as a woman in a STEM career, and then transition to teaching STEM education and learning what it takes to make sure that we're building that pipeline of students and building awareness of the opportunities that exist within the wide breadth of STEM careers. So that's the piece that I kind of lived and breathed as both a professional and an educator in STEM.
That is just fascinating. And all of that combined was kind of the platform for what you're doing now. So tell us a little bit about how and where you influence education now.
Thank you. Yeah, so having spent some time in the classroom and then in school district at a leadership level, I actually spent time at a nonprofit for a few years and really had my eyes open. Even being in a huge district, I worked in the seventh largest school district in the nation, in Hillsborough County Public Schools. You think that I thought rather that I have a good handle on what is happening in education, and you broaden that to all across the US, and then you broaden that further across the globe. And there's really so many ways that learning is implemented across the world. There's a lot of things that are similar, though. The heart that teachers have for their students and the passion they have for teaching their students is universal. How many hours they have, the subjects that are required, the ages of students at different levels, that's different everywhere, right? But the work that I'm doing now, I do have the opportunity to have some impact globally. I work at Siemens Digital Industries, and we are a multinational organization. I'm a business segment within the larger Siemens Corporation that operates globally, and I lead scalable STEM solutions. So I actually lead a team of folks that create products in the K-12 space in the STEM education area.
That is absolutely fascinating. I love that for you. I think that is such a great place for you to be, and what you're accomplishing there is incredible. So, what would you say has been the most impactful change you've made in the realm of education during this last year and a half?
Thank you. So it's really a year and a half, maybe 2.5 years, actually, that I have been working on a couple of things within my day-to-day role that have now, come to fruition, or that we've been able to bring to market. It was my first foray into kind of the ed tech space, and the products that I work on creating are in that ed tech space, though they're flavored with STEM and engineering education. And what we have done is we've taken and transformed into STEM education into both a web accessible web application that shares STEM activities in a flexible way with students and teachers all over the globe, called Hour of Engineering. And that is a great way that we're able to make STEM more engaging, more attainable, and accessible, so that all students can see what lies ahead for their potential in engineering careers. So that has been really important. We have over 100,000 users on our platform that we launched just over 2.5 years ago. So that's going really well. And that's aimed at the upper elementary through middle school, where we're really targeting those students who are looking to be inspired, looking for purpose. Why am I applying this math? What am I doing with this science? And as I mentioned earlier about how I define STEM, it is that application of math and science through engineering. And so that's what this site does. It doesn't talk about engineering as, you have to be really good at math and really good at science to solve these really hard problems. It talks about where the people who do these jobs work, what types of problems that they solve, how they help people. So the engineering is in many ways a people helping or industry where we're creating things that serve us or serve the environment, or there's lots of different flavors of engineering. So having that and the framing of that messaging is really important. And the second product that I work on is called the Pathway to Learning Engineering. And this is for that secondary, upper secondary education environment where there's a little bit more choice, a little bit more formalized learning, where we can engage students in higher level rigor topics. And we're doing that in a fully cloud-based environment, browser-based environment. So trying to remove a lot of the barriers to that have historically existed to engineering education. That a critical piece of having an educator in the classroom is something that we really focus on because we want to make sure that educator is empowered and has the tools that they need, but that they're industry tools, that the tools that the students are using, the engineering software that they're using, the problems that they're working on are based in the workforce. And so as Siemens, as a global STEM company and engineering technology company, we have access to knowing what those current trends are in the industry and having the latest software and having customers, serving those industries. And so we bring that relevance into our content through this application. So we have that direct line to what the future workforce needs are. And so that has been really rewarding, being able to be that bridge, because I know what the students need to know, and I'm so close to what the industry needs. It used to be I'd have to work with an advisor board and have them tell me and give me some scenarios of what was going on. And I still do that in a lot of ways, but just being so much closer to that now is really rewarding.
Something that just stood out of that wonderful explanation you just gave was when you said the work is student serving. And I think that is particularly important to draw out because I think most educators are certainly student minded. That's what they're here to do, what I'm here to do, what you're here to do. But I think when we to think of a traditional scientist or engineer, we think of their work with things and products and, test tubes and things like that. And so to hear about how science, technology, and engineering and math are all connected to creating things that serve students and reach out to students. That's really incredibly powerful work. I'm really impressed by that whole idea and the way that you just described that you're able to be close to the industry and also close to the students in your work. I think that's a really unique role. Do you feel like you're kind of unique in the work that you do?
I've heard that. No, but I do seem to be an outlier for sure. But I have been lucky to meet people with, similar career trajectories as myself. But that's a little bit of a badge of honor that I own as well. I mentioned I was in a middle school classroom for 12 years, and I wasn't there because I got stuck there. I was there because I had this philosophy, my own personal philosophy for myself, that I wasn't going to move to the next step of education and leadership or to the next level until I knew I understood what it meant to be in a classroom as an educator. And because I didn't feel that I could be an effective leader at the next step up if I truly didn't know the everything that they might go through and who they were truly serving, which it was being the students. And so I've kept that with me. I say all the time, I am a teacher first. That hat is on me all of the time. I never take it off. And that means I'm there. And my perspective is going to be that as a teacher serving students. And so, while I have that perspective, what it means to be an educator in a classroom continues to evolve. And so I spend a lot of time listening to users and collecting feedback from pilot schools, just talking to my former colleagues or current colleagues when I do a training or professional development, having those conversations through my work here at National Louis University, being a professor, understand and hearing what my students who are in school districts and in classrooms are going through, that is the lens that I kind of process everything through. My title might be project manager. I am definitely in a technology heavy software space, but a teacher first, always.
I love that. Teacher first. I've heard a few teachers talk about that. People who have moved out of the traditional classroom have said something similar to what you just said, although I think that's also unique, that intentionality behind the time you spent 12 years in middle school. That's a long time to be in middle school, in a middle school classroom. And most teachers who teach in K-12 know what I'm talking about and what you're talking about and what that means. So you definitely did immerse yourself in the teaching environment. And I agree with you. That is an important piece of becoming an effective leader in other ways, because you have to understand what those teachers' day is like and what they need to move forward. So now you're meeting those needs in a whole other way at a whole different level. And that's really incredibly powerful. So I'm also wondering, what are some of your other outside contributions to the world of education?
Well, I guess I would consider it outside of the world of just my day to day, my everyday. And I think that is my work at National Louis University, being able to give back to the program that I just completed and work with the next series cohort of doctoral candidates, students coming up through the program. And that feels very much like I'm giving back the knowledge that I just obtained having gone through the program. So that's a little bit outside, but bringing a lot of that perspective of my day to day and the use of technology tools, things like that into my course, I think is something that it feels like an additional contribution for me, just because I do have that different perspective. And educational leaders who are in school districts, in classrooms, and leading, they actually have to evaluate products that I'm making. And so, not that I'm bringing ed tech or, bringing that into the classroom necessarily, but the evidence-based leadership principles, being able to have strong foundations in research and data-driven decision making, that is a universal practice across what I do to make sure that my product is good and that we're making decisions wisely with data, and not just the fact that I'm a data point of one, even though I might have a big breadth of knowledge in that area, that I'm getting that feedback from customers, and I translate that in just a different way for my students so they can see a different perspective and really drive that home. But I think additionally to that, if we go back, definitely working with students in the community. I do stay connected with some of the former teams that I used to coach and mentor in the robotics world, and still get to participate through some consultation work that I do in training and professional development in the STEM area. And I'm always lucky when I get the opportunity to go to conferences. I was actually just at a conference last week, the NAF conference with career academies, and got to present. And so just being with educators and just sharing what I know, tips and tricks, and talk, classroom habits, and not necessarily, the products that I'm a part of, that always feels like giving back to me.
Oh, I agree. I agree. That's so really wonderful. It really is. So you mentioned that you're teaching doctoral candidates at National Louis University who are in the very same program that from which you graduated. And what courses are you teaching?
So I am teaching a course on data-driven decision making and research practices. So those are two separate courses. They happen very early on. The research practices course really helps give students a foundation in identifying good bodies of research and learning how to correctly identify different methodologies of research so that the students can apply that. So that's a big thing for me, right? The difference between theory and then application. I tend to go, okay, yep, got the theory. How do I apply it? And so that comes across in my teaching as well. So I speak like that. I speak more of this is how we're applying, this is what we're doing with that knowledge more than I speak to the theory side. So the educational research is about that, the application of learning how to do good research and then apply that through synthesis and analysis of that research so that the students can apply that to their dissertation later on when they're collecting, generating their literature review, or trying to find good sources to support the points that they want to make. And then the second course that I teach is all about data-driven decision making. And so a little bit building on the research course, that course focuses on how we're applying data to make leadership decisions, but then how do we analyze and present data in a way that is consumable and understandable and can help others understand the conclusions that are being made across a study. So the visualization of that data, the analysis and the interpretation of that data, which that's kind of the crux of a dissertation, right? Is the how you've collected the data, how you've formulated those research questions, and then how you present it and the conclusions. So that's the focus there. And then the technology tools that we can bring to that, things like AI. How can that make our lives easier? How can we collaborate with those technology tools and make our research better? Not outsourcing the thought processes, but how can we use it as collaboration to help us very quickly identify gaps in our own knowledge about our topics, even topics we think we understand very deeply. The tools like that can help us. So we get a little bit of that in there in my courses.
That's one of the things that I really appreciate about what you're doing at National Louis University is you brought some real relevancy. You used that word earlier to the research courses that you're teaching so that students can see how they apply. And that I think that's pretty much traditionally been a problem for students is that they don't tend to like research courses very much because research can be dull and research it can be difficult to understand how to make it relevant. And so I know from my experience working with you when you were a doctoral candidate yourself, you talked to me about using AI tools when they were very first being used. And I thought what you were proposing to do in your own study was fascinating. And one of the things that I really appreciated was the way you were bringing ethics to the use of AI. That's a big concern among the educational community, not just in graduate school and postgraduate school, but K-12 through K-16. I think we are concerned about that. And can you speak a little bit about bringing the ethics? You kind of touched on it with saying you don't want it to AI to replace thinking. So if it's not replacing thinking, what is it doing and how should we as educators be using it?
No, that's a really great question. Thank you. So, the my philosophy on how AI will apply really has to do with us as educators, not just how are we users of the tool, but how do we wield that with students and how do we bring that into education as well. So I do go right to the practical in my courses, but as well as, with my students of how do we apply this within the educational setting. I long have felt that everything that we're doing in education is preparing students for later in life. So if we look at technology and tools like AI, so AI being a general things like GPT stands for general purpose tool. So these are tools that are maybe a little shallow, but very broad, where in the last couple of years, we've seen these tools of different names, Copilot, ChatGPT, pop up and everything, and that will kind of continue to grow. So we ask ourselves, what future are we preparing our students for if we don't expose them to how to use AI tools responsibly, how to be aware of not just how to use them, but have some literacy about what they aren't, and how to critically analyze the information that the tool is giving us. These tools analyze and the data sets, huge data sets, that and give us tremendous amounts of information much quicker than any other way so far in human history. And it's at our fingertips, and everybody has access to that. So, as educators, making sure that we are literate ourselves about what these tools are and understand how to use them as collaborators, as assistants in the work that we're doing, but not just turn over, a task wholly to the AI tool to say, go and, do this specific task for me. And then you just, take that information wholesale and pass it along as your own, right? That's a clear ethical boundary right there being crossed. But having a purpose and a persona and inputting that into an AI tool, that's kind of how I talk about it. As if you and I were going to have a debate about something, if you can get a hold of Carla, go ahead and ask your AI tool, have that debate and see how that sits with you. Pull that information out, do some additional research separate from that tool, apply that, to your learning. So that's one way, that I work, talk with my students about it. In the classroom, though, it, students have access to these tools. And so it begs the question, as educators, we can ban them. Sure, we could try, or we could have students learn how to use them. And we could allow ourselves to shift some of the ways that we're assessing student learning so that it is relevant in a world where AI exists, that and with that sort of easy access for students.
Thank you for that information. And I want to say, in case you didn't realize this, when you demonstrated for me when ChatGPT first showed up, how you wanted to use it in your dissertation work, that was my introduction to ChatGPT. And I could see right away how you were bringing in the ethical approach to it. That was one of my immediate thoughts was, oh, she's looking at this truly as a tool, not as a way to get out of something or find an easier way, but actually find a better way. And I remember that you asked if you could share with your whole cohort how to use ChatGPT to help analyze themes in qualitative data. And that was really a great introduction for me and a very impressive one. And I'm excited that you are now sharing that much deeper at this point knowledge base that you have with our students. And you're really doing a lot for keeping the work that we do in our educational leadership program relevant in terms of the research that we do and how we use the data that we collect and how we analyze it. And you're doing a great job of introducing the very most current methods of analyzing data. And I really appreciate that. So, the question that I want to attach to my comments is, what suggestions do you have for your students, not only about using current tools and things of that nature, but in general as well? If they want to be change makers and influencers like you are, and that's what they're studying to be, that's what they're trying to become, what would you suggest for them?
I kind of have four points to my suggestions. So I'd say first, stay deeply connected, to your why, the reason that you want to make change, and the purpose for what you want to make change around, that really can sustain you. You heard my background from engineer to educator, and that, like, where I am now, I've stayed very close to that why, like who I was as a professional person. Now, I haven't come too far from that. So of course, I have an affinity for technology and STEM. And so, that comes easy for me, or it appears that it does, but it does come with a lot of hard work and a lot of learning along the way to apply it across all of the different contexts that I have for all the years. So I would say that embrace being a lifelong learner. I don't sit here with, Dr. Libby Simpson status and say, I've learned everything that I have to learn, embracing being that lifelong learner, meaning listen carefully to the people that you serve, to the students, your fellow teachers and leaders, educators and parents and folks in your industry, because that meaningful change really comes from understanding the needs and how those needs evolve. The adoption of AI for me personally is just me saying like, oh, what is this new thing? Okay, use it, and then figuring out how I could apply it. That sort of leans into that aspect in my recommendation of really leaning into being a lifelong learner. And so the third thing is kind of don't be afraid to collaborate outside of your traditional silos. Some of the most impactful work that I've been able to do has come from collaborating with industry professionals and nonprofits when I was in the classroom as a teacher. And the reverse of that, now that I'm at the industry level, working with educators and students to bring fresh ideas, to one side or the other. And then finally, is sharing what you know, using your voice to tell people about it. It's not the most comfortable thing to do all of the time, but it really is helpful. Having received that mentorship and that knowledge very early on, those are some of the earliest memories I have in education. And my go-to education phrase comes from a person who, I just looked up to, someone who knew I was not a teacher, showed up at my school day one, kind of taught my class for the first day. And he used to say, whoever is doing most of the work is doing most of the learning. And that has stuck with me. It fits everywhere that I need it to fit. And so now I tell people about that. And those influential people, you, of course, who are one of them, have been kind enough to share their knowledge with me. And I just feel like it's my duty to pass that on. And people can take it or leave it. If they gleam a little bit out, great, I've done it. But just share what you're doing. Tell people about it, and it might resonate with someone and help them.
And I've watched you live what you just said. I've watched you be that collaborator, that learner, that sticking close to your why, all of those things. And I think that's really great advice for people who, like you, are seeking to make changes, but not for the sake of change. Like I think I heard you say, understand, what the change is, why it's necessary. And I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate what you are doing currently in your current role at Siemens. I appreciate what you're doing at National Louis University. And thanks so much for coming and sharing your thinking with us today.
Thank you for inviting me and having me on your podcast. So I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Stay.